There comes a moment in everyone's life when the ticking of the clock grows louder, not as a background hum, but as a reminder that time is slipping, that dreams have changed, and that the world has started to move a little faster than we can keep up with. You look around and everyone seems to be ahead. New beginnings, fresh love, ambitious careers, vibrant lives. Meanwhile, you feel paused, left behind. The mirror shows the lines forming, the body slowing, the silence growing. Aging is no longer an abstract idea, it's a presence. And in that presence arises a question. Did I miss my chance? But what if the stillness you feel isn't emptiness, but awakening? Buddhism has long held the key to understanding life's impermanence, not as a curse, but as a sacred gift. Age is not a failure. Slowness is not a weakness. Being behind is an illusion crafted by a noisy world obsessed with speed. In silence, in aging, in the quiet spaces, there is transformation. This is a story about that transformation. It follows the journey of a man named Robert, a retired professor in his early 60s, lonely, forgotten, and slowly being consumed by the belief that his life no longer matters. Until one day, a stranger sitting under a tree changes everything. Through 5 timeless Buddhist truths, Robert discovers what it truly means to live. Not through youth, success, or external validation, but through peace, presence, and self-realization. Let us begin with the first truth. Impermanence is not the enemy. It is the path to peace. 1.1. A life that felt like it was slipping away. Robert sat alone on his wooden porch, the late afternoon sun casting golden streaks through the trees. His cup of tea had gone cold, untouched. He watched a small boy ride past on a bicycle, laughing, trailing behind what Robert assumed to be his father. That laugh stirred something inside him, an echo of something lost, something warm and distant. It had been 2 years since his retirement from teaching history at a local college. A career built over decades was now reduced to dusty certificates on the wall. The house was too quiet. The phone barely rang. Friends had moved, some passed, and his only daughter hadn't spoken to him since a disagreement 3 years ago. At 63, Robert felt invisible. He looked in the mirror that morning and hardly recognized himself. Thinning silver hair, a neck that sagged slightly, dark patches under his eyes. A thought had whispered, "You're not who you used to be." That sentence hit him harder than he expected, and perhaps what scared him more was the follow-up. Then who are you now? 1.2. A chance encounter beneath the banyan tree. The local park was usually filled with children and joggers in the morning, but by noon, it quieted down. That's when Robert preferred to visit. He walked slowly, letting his cane tap rhythmically against the stone path. One day, as he rounded a shaded bend near an ancient banyan tree, he noticed an elderly man seated cross-legged beneath it. His head was shaved, his robe a soft mix of ochre and brown. A monk, perhaps? But why here? The man had an open, peaceful face, like still water. Robert, unsure why, stopped. The monk looked up and smiled. "Peace to you," he said. Robert nodded. "Are you meditating?" The monk chuckled softly. "Yes, and no. I am sitting. That is enough." Robert hesitated, then sat beside him on the nearby bench. After a moment, he said, "Do you mind me asking something?" "Of course not." "Do you ever feel like life passed you by?" The monk's eyes met his, gentle and steady. "Yes, once, until I realized it was never passing me by. It was unfolding exactly as it should." 1.3. The first teaching, Anicca, impermanence. The monk introduced himself as Venerable Dawa, originally from a monastery in Bhutan. He had lived decades as a monk, and now spent time traveling and teaching the Dharma in simple places, parks, tea shops, rural villages. "What you feel," he said, "this sense that life left you behind is the illusion of permanence. You thought life would stay a certain way. Friends nearby, health strong, identity solid. Robert nodded slowly. In Buddhism, we call this anicca, impermanence. It is the first truth. Everything changes. Your body, your mind, your relationships. Nothing is fixed. But it's hard, Robert admitted. I miss my old life, my job, my strength, even just being useful. Dawa smiled. Yes, that's because we cling, not to people or jobs, but to how things were. You are mourning not your career, but the version of yourself you tied to it. 104. The story of the falling leaf. Dawa bent down and picked up a yellow leaf lying beside him. He held it gently. This leaf was once green, full of life. Now it has aged. But is it useless? Robert shrugged. Look closer, Dawa said. Robert noticed the leaf's intricate patterns, the golden veins, its brittle elegance. It has a different beauty now, Dawa whispered. Just like you. Age is not the enemy. It is a transformation. Then he gently let the leaf go, and the wind carried it away. 1.5. The fear of aging. A deeper illusion. That evening, Robert couldn't stop thinking about the leaf. He realized that most of his suffering didn't come from being old. It came from resisting the fact that he was aging. Buddha taught that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Robert was suffering because he believed aging meant irrelevance, but Dawa's leaf challenged that belief. Perhaps impermanence wasn't something to fight, but to understand. 1.6 Meditation. Breathing into change. The next morning, Robert returned to the park. Dawa was already there. Let's meditate, Dawa said. I'll teach you the breath of impermanence. They sat. Dawa instructed, feel the breath enter, feel it leave. Notice how even the breath comes and goes. Nothing stays, not even this moment. Robert followed. At first his thoughts raced, but slowly he began to feel something, space between the thoughts. And within that space, peace. When they finished, Dawa said, every breath you take reminds you, change is natural. You are not decaying. You are shifting. 1.7. The shift within. In the weeks that followed, Robert returned to the park daily. Each visit brought new insight. He began writing in a journal, memories, regrets, thoughts. He even began organizing a small community reading group, something he had postponed for years. He no longer rushed to dye his gray hair. He even laughed when he needed glasses at the store. He wasn't erasing his age. He was embracing it. 1.8. Reflection. The beauty of letting go. One evening, as Robert sipped warm tea again on the porch, he watched another leaf fall from the tree. But this time he didn't feel sad. He smiled, because he now knew everything changes, and that's okay. In impermanence, there is freedom. In letting go, there is peace. And so, the first Buddhist truth had settled into his heart, not just as an idea, but as a way of being. To one a new morning, a new question. It had been over a month since Robert's first meeting with Venerable Dawa. Each day in the park had become more than routine. It had become ritual, his journal now filled with thoughts and metaphors. My body is a temple in slow restoration. Youth was loud, age is quiet wisdom, and I am not the leaf, I am the wind that carried it. But on this particular morning, Robert awoke with a new question resting heavy on his chest. If I am not my past, not my job, not even my youth, then what am I now? He stood before the bathroom mirror, this time not out of self-critique, but out of curiosity. He observed the wrinkles around his eyes, the slight curve of his back, the soft fold under his chin. And for the first time, he didn't see a man growing old. He saw a man waking up. 2.2 Dawa's quiet smile. When Robert arrived at the park, Dawa was feeding crumbs to a pair of birds beneath the tree. I thought you were late, the monk said, not looking up. I'm not late, Robert smiled. Time just moves slower when you're enjoying the view. Dawa grinned. Ah, the man of metaphors speaks again. They sat together in silence. The breeze was cool, and the sound of the leaves above was almost like whispering monks chanting in unison. "I have a question," Robert said. Dawa nodded. "Who am I, if I'm not my body?" 2.3. The second truth. You are not your body. Dawa picked up a small round stone from beside him and held it out. "This stone," he said, "has been shaped by years of rain, sun, wind, even footsteps. Do you think its worth has decreased?" Robert shook his head. "And yet, look at how we treat our bodies as they change. We scold ourselves, mourn our aging skin, our weaker knees. But the stone is still sacred." He paused. "In Buddhism, we teach the second truth. You are not your body. The body is a vehicle, a vessel for awareness. It changes like everything else, but you, the observer, the awareness, that remains." Robert's eyes softened. "But it's hard to separate myself from this skin, these bones. When they hurt, I hurt." "Yes," Dawa agreed. "But the pain is part of the journey, not the identity." 2.4. The mirror meditation. That afternoon, Dawa guided Robert through an unusual meditation. He brought a hand mirror from his bag and placed it before him. "Look into it, truly look." Robert stared at his reflection. "Now," Dawa instructed, "say, 'This is not me. This is not mine. I am not this form.'" At first it felt strange, robotic. But as he repeated the word slowly, 10 times, 20, something shifted. He no longer saw his flaws. He no longer judged his age. He simply saw a form, one of many, impermanent, yet beautiful, just like a wave in the ocean, always moving, never separate from the sea. 2.5. The story of the cracked bowl. Later, Dawa shared a story from an old Buddhist scroll. There was once a monk who used a cracked bowl for many years. Every day, others teased him for it, saying it was ugly, broken, unworthy of holy rituals. But the monk never replaced it. When asked why, he said, "Because the cracks let the moonlight in." You see, Robert, our cracks, our wrinkles, our scars, they are how the light of wisdom enters us. Robert closed his eyes and let those words wash over him. 2.6. Truth 3. Attachment is the root of suffering. In the days that followed, Robert became more reflective. He wasn't just thinking about his body, but about other things he held on to tightly. His regrets, his anger toward his daughter, the bitterness of being alone during his final years of teaching. One morning he brought it up to Dawa. "I've been thinking about things I'm still holding on to." Dawa nodded knowingly. "Then you're ready for the third truth." Robert leaned in. "Suffering," Dawa said slowly, "comes not from what happens to us, but from our attachment to how we wanted it to be." He continued. "In Pali, it's called tanha, craving. We crave that people stay, that youth remains, that plans go the way we imagined, and when they don't, we suffer." 2.7. Robert's confession. That evening, Robert sat on his porch and finally opened the old wooden box on his bookshelf. Inside were photos, many of his daughter, Emily, a picture of her graduation, a letter she once wrote on Father's Day, even a dried flower she had picked and pressed inside a book of poems they used to read together. Tears welled in Robert's eyes. They had stopped talking after a bitter argument about her choice to move across the country. He had said harsh things. She had cried and left. That was 3 years ago. He thought of calling her so many times. But pride, ego, fear had stopped him. Until now. 2.8. The parable of the hot coal. The next day, Robert told Dawa everything. The monk nodded gently, listening without judgment. Then he shared a parable. A man once carried a hot coal in his bare hands, angry that someone else had hurt him. But it was not the other person who was burned, it was he who held the coal. Dawa paused. "Let go of the coal, Robert. But what if she doesn't forgive me? That is not your part to control. Your part is to release the weight." 2.9. The letter. That night, Robert sat at his old writing desk and penned a letter to Emily. No pride, no explanations, just truth and love. I was wrong. I was scared of losing you and said things that pushed you away. Not a day has passed that I didn't miss you. If you're willing, I would love to hear your voice again. But even if not, please know, you are forever my light. He posted the letter the next morning with trembling hands, not knowing the outcome, but finally free of the weight. 2:10. The unexpected call. 2 weeks passed. Then, one late evening, the phone rang. Robert stared at it. The caller ID, Emily. He answered, heart pounding. "Dad?" a soft voice said. Robert couldn't speak for a moment. Then, "Emily, is that really you?" "I got your letter," she said, her voice cracking. "I read it 3 times. I miss you too." Tears streamed silently down his face. They spoke for 2 hours, about everything and nothing, about old memories, new dreams, about the silence that had finally broken. It was not a perfect reunion, but it was real, and it was enough. 2.11 Dawa's final words for the day. When Robert told Dawa what had happened, the monk smiled and said, "See, the universe moves when we do." He added, "You didn't get your daughter back by force, you got her back by letting go. That is the third truth, freedom through non-attachment." Robert whispered, "Then why does my heart still feel so full?" Dawa grinned, "Because now it has room." 2.12 Closing reflection. Lightness in the soul. That evening, Robert stood in front of the mirror again. He smiled at his reflection, not out of vanity, but gratitude. He touched his face and whispered, "Thank you, body, for carrying me." He placed his hand over his heart and whispered, "Thank you, life, for changing me." And as he looked into his own eyes, he saw something he hadn't in years: peace. The second and third truths had taken root. He was more than his body. He was free from the chains of clinging. He didn't need to go backward. He was finally moving forward, quietly but surely. 3.1 The final bend in the path. The autumn air carried a crispness that signaled the slow retreat of summer. Trees had begun shedding their leaves in gentle waves, and Robert found comfort in the rustling sounds of change. It had been 3 months since his first encounter with Venerable Dawa. In that short time, Robert had shed more than just old habits. He had shed an identity he clung to for years. He was lighter, not because life had suddenly become perfect, but because he had stopped demanding that it be. But even as inner peace took root, a quiet question remained. Can I truly trust life to unfold without controlling it? He didn't fully know the answer, but something told him. He would find it soon. 3.2 A visit to the temple. One morning, Dawa greeted Robert with a new proposal. "There's a temple a few miles away in the hills," he said. "Very old, very quiet. I go there once a season to retreat for a few days. Would you come with me?" Robert's eyes lit up. "I'd be honored." The next day, they drove together in silence through winding roads. Hills rose and fell like sleeping dragons covered in forest. Eventually, they arrived at a weathered stone gate. Inside, the temple sat like a sacred memory, ancient, still, and humming with unseen life. It was nestled among tall pine trees, and the scent of incense drifted gently through the courtyard. Orange and crimson prayer flags flapped lazily in the breeze. Robert felt something stir in his chest, a peace deeper than words. They removed their shoes and entered. 3.3 The parable of the farmer and the horse. In the courtyard, Dawa motioned for Robert to sit. "You've come far," he said. "But there are 2 more truths I must share." Robert nodded. Dawa began. "There was once a farmer who had a single horse. One day the horse ran away. His neighbors said, 'Such bad luck.' The farmer replied, 'Maybe so, maybe not.' The next week, the horse returned, bringing with it 2 wild horses. The neighbors said, 'What good fortune.' The farmer said again, "Maybe so, maybe not." Then the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses, was thrown off, and broke his leg. "Terrible news," said the neighbors. "Maybe so, maybe not," said the farmer. A week later, the army came through the village to recruit young men. Because his son had a broken leg, he was spared. "You are so lucky," said the neighbors. The farmer only smiled. "Maybe so, maybe not." Robert listened in silence. The fourth truth, Dawa said, is, let go of control. You never really had it. 3-4. Why control causes suffering. Robert closed his eyes and reflected. He remembered all the times he tried to force outcomes, convincing his daughter to stay, clinging to a job past its season, resisting change in his aging body. Every time he tried to grasp tighter, the more things slipped through his fingers. Control, he now saw, was an illusion. It was the ego's desperate attempt to feel secure in an unpredictable world. We suffer, Dawa continued, because we demand that life match our expectations. But life is not a machine, it is a river, it flows. Robert whispered, and we must flow with it. Dawa smiled. 3.5. The Temple Bell. That evening, Robert was invited to ring the temple bell. Dawa explained, each ring of this bell is a letting go, a surrender, a declaration that this moment, just as it is enough. Robert gripped the rope. With one deep breath, he pulled. The bell rang out, low and resonant. The sound vibrated in his chest, then rippled through the air like a sacred wave. In that moment, Robert imagined every regret, every past failure, every should have been, dissolving. He was not a man trying to control life anymore. He was a man learning to trust it. 3.6. A silent retreat. For the next 24 hours, Dawa and Robert practiced silence. No words, only presence. They ate quietly, walked slowly through the stone garden, meditated under the pine trees. Robert noticed the details he had often missed. The way sunlight filtered through leaves, the hum of bees, the sound of wind brushing past prayer flags. In silence, Robert began to feel a deep truth. He didn't need to be doing something to matter. Just being was enough. 3.7. The fifth truth. You are exactly where you should be. After the silent retreat, Dawa brought Robert to a wooden bench overlooking the hills. They sat for a long while. Robert, Dawa finally said, you have now come to the fifth and final truth. He looked out toward the horizon. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you should be. Robert's eyes welled up. I've spent so many years believing I was falling behind. And now? Robert breathed deeply. Now I see I was simply on a different path. Dawa nodded. The Buddha taught that comparison is one of the most subtle poisons. We each have our own unfolding. A flower doesn't bloom before its time, nor does it rush. 3.8. The map was always within. They walked down the hill back to the temple. Robert looked at the path beneath his feet and thought of his life. All the detours, all the doubts, all the moments of pain, they were not mistakes. They were necessary. Every struggle, every regret had guided him here. To wisdom, to peace, to self-love. He didn't need to redo the past. He didn't need to chase the future. He only needed to be present. 3.9. The final teaching. Trust the unfolding. At the temple's exit, Dawa gave Robert a small scroll. Inside was written a single line. The lotus blooms only after the mud. Robert understood. Life had never left him behind. It was preparing him, softening his soil, deepening his soul, readying his bloom. 3.10. One last walk in the garden. Before they left, Robert asked to spend a few moments alone in the garden. He walked slowly, noticing everything. He sat on a stone bench and closed his eyes. The breeze kissed his face. His breath was slow, deliberate. He whispered, I forgive myself. I release control. I trust life. I am where I need to be. And in that moment he felt it. Peace that wasn't borrowed from a book or a teacher, but from within. 3:11 going home, but not the same. The drive back from the temple was quiet, not heavy but full like the earth after rain. Robert returned to his porch, his tea, his birds, and his journal. But nothing was the same, because he was no longer the same. He no longer feared time. He no longer chased validation. He no longer mourned what he wasn't. Instead, he celebrated what he was, a man in his 60s, a father trying again, a soul awake. Absolutely. Continuing from where we paused, here's the remaining part of Chapter 3, completing the 5,000-plus word structure. This portion closes Robert's transformation with deep reflection and insight. 3.12. The 5 truths, etched in his heart, continued. Robert sat down that night and opened a fresh page in his journal. He titled it, The 5 Buddhist Truths That Changed My Life. 1. Impermanence is not the enemy. Change is natural. Let it shape you, not scare you. 2. You are not your body. Your soul is timeless, even if your bones ache. 3. Attachment causes suffering. Let go and watch your spirit rise. 4. You were never in control. Trust the river. It knows where to go. 5. You are not behind. You are in bloom. Even winter prepares the ground for spring. He underlined the final one twice. That was the one that had held him prisoner for the longest. 3:13. A quiet celebration. In the following days, Robert returned to his life. Tea on the porch, morning walks in the park, phone calls with Emily now happening weekly. But there was something new in his eyes. Not youthful sparkle, but ancient calm. He had stopped searching for milestones and started recognizing miracles. Every day felt sacred now, not because of anything external, but because he had stopped waiting for life to begin. 3.14. The gift to others. One Sunday afternoon, Robert noticed an elderly man sitting alone at the park, hunched and lost in thought. Something about him reminded Robert of his old self, the man before the leaf, before the mirror, before the monk. He walked over, gently sat beside him, and said, I used to think my best days were behind me, but someone once showed me that they might just be starting now. The man looked up. Robert smiled and handed him a small folded card. Inside, handwritten, were the 5 Buddhist truths. 3:15, Dawa's departure. A few weeks later, Dawa told Robert it was time for him to leave. There are more parks, more people sitting on benches with questions in their hearts. Robert nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I don't know how to thank you. Dawa chuckled. Then don't. Just keep walking the path. They hugged, the kind of hug that felt like both goodbye and never-ending presence. And then Dawa was gone, disappearing into the city with nothing but a satchel and a peaceful stride. 3:16. A letter from Emily. That night, Robert received a message from Emily. Dad, I've been thinking. Would you like to visit us for Thanksgiving this year? We'd love to have you. Bring your journal and your tea. I want to hear all your stories. Tears filled his eyes. Not from sadness, not even from joy. From fullness. Life hadn't forgotten him. It was only now beginning to speak, because he had finally quieted enough to listen. 3:17. The final meditation. Robert sat in meditation that evening. He didn't need guided words or chants, he just breathed. And with each breath he felt the 5 truths gently woven through his spirit, like threads of silk binding his past, present, and future into a single, sacred now. He whispered, I am not late. I am not broken. I am not behind. I am becoming. 3:18, closing reflection. The man on the porch. Months passed, seasons turned. Robert still sat on the porch with his tea. The world outside kept rushing. The news kept spinning. The noise continued. But inside his soul, it was quiet, not empty, full of meaning, full of forgiveness, full of presence. He had become the man he once searched for, not through achievement, not through fixing himself, but through acceptance. Final passage. The river knows the way. If someone had walked past and seen him sitting there, they might have thought, there's just an old man watching the wind. But if they looked closely, into his stillness, into his silence, they might have seen something else entirely. A man who had finally found peace. A soul no longer fighting the current. A heart no longer measuring life by time or trophies. Just a man, letting the river carry him, because now he knew. The river knows the way.